A flight attendant slapped a passenger, but he made one colossal, career-ending mistake. He didn't realize the passenger was the black CEO who owned the jet. Just minutes later, in a breathtaking display of authority, she didn't just fire the attendant, she fired his entire crew and her own executive team that watched it happen. This is the story of how one ugly moment at 40,000 feet triggered a corporate cleansing that serves as a masterclass in leadership. It forces us to ask, where's the line between service and respect, and what happens when that line is crossed with the one person you can't afford to anger? If you believe respect is non-negotiable, stick around. You won't want to miss how this unfolds. What would you do if someone you employed, on your own private jet, laid a hand on you? Humiliated you, simply because they made a twisted assumption about who you were? Now, what if you had the power to end not just their career, but the careers of every single person who stood by and watched it happen? This is a story about that exact scenario. It's a powerful thought experiment, a modern parable pieced together from the themes of disrespect and bias that we see playing out in countless viral narratives online. To be clear, the names, the company, the specific details, they're fictionalized to tell a powerful story. Camille Rhodes isn't a real person. But the situation she represents is very, very real. It's a story that has captured the imagination of people everywhere, not because it's about a single, shocking event, but because it asks a tough question: what is the ultimate price of disrespect? Before the slap that would echo through the world of private aviation, there was silence. Not peace, but the charged silence of observation. On board the Gulfstream G650, a sleek vessel of chrome and cream leather, sat its owner, Camille Rhodes. If you didn't know who she was, you'd never guess. Dressed in a simple, perfectly tailored charcoal suit, her focus was locked on her tablet. No flashy jewelry, no loud talking, just an aura of unshakable focus. Camille Rhodes was the fictional founder and CEO of our stories, Nexus Innovations, a tech giant she'd built from the ground up. Her journey was legendary, but her real genius wasn't just in tech, it was in reading people. She had a core belief: a company isn't about products or stock prices. It's about culture. And she knew that if you don't build that culture on purpose, it rots from the inside out. This flight was turning into a perfect case study. She was flying with her top team, Julian, her COO, Anthony, her head of marketing, and other VPs she'd personally mentored. They were brilliant, ambitious, and, as Camille was starting to see, dangerously complacent. The flight crew wasn't hers. They were contracted from a premier service. The lead attendant, Mark, had a polished smile that never reached his eyes. His number two was a younger attendant named Vanessa. Both carried themselves with an air of detached arrogance. They'd served billionaires and royalty. To them, this was just another job. The first crack in the facade was tiny. After boarding, Camille had quietly asked for the cabin to be cooled down, a standard request. Mark smiled, nodded, but 20 minutes later, the air was still warm. Camille noticed but said nothing. Then she watched as Anthony, her marketing head, loudly demanded some obscure whiskey. Instead of a polite "no," Mark shot a smirk at Vanessa. "We'll see what we can do, sir," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Camille filed it away. Another data point. It was the kind of service that screamed, "You're not a guest, you're a problem to be managed." She then watched her own executives. They laughed along, creating a loud, self-congratulatory boys' club. They saw her, but they didn't see her. In their eyes, she was the quiet figurehead in the corner, the source of their power, but not really in their world. This, Camille knew, was a dangerous mistake. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was a weapon. She'd been sensing a drift in her executive suite for months, a growing entitlement, a feeling that they were above the rules. This flight, this compressed, intimate space, was showing her the problem in miniature. The flight crew's disrespect was just a mirror for the disrespect her own team showed her with their dismissive behavior. Camille made another simple request, asking Vanessa for a bottle of still water. Vanessa, mid-chat with Julian, held up a single finger, telling the CEO to wait, before finishing her story. When she finally brought the water, she clanked it on the table without a word. Every executive saw it. And not one of them met Camille's eye. They were complicit, choosing their own comfort over loyalty. To them, it was a small thing. To Camille, it was a catastrophic failure. They were supposed to be her corporate immune system, and they were letting a virus spread right in front of them. Camille's face was a mask. She took a sip of water and looked out the window at the endless blue. The storm wasn't outside. It was right there in the cabin, and it was about to break. Section 2, the confrontation, the slap heard around the world, 2 hours into the flight, somewhere over the dark Atlantic, the fragile peace shattered. Camille had stepped into the jet's private rear cabin to review a top-secret document. When she returned to her seat, she knew instantly. Her laptop, left closed and angled perfectly toward the window, was now askew. A cold, professional stillness washed over her. This wasn't about a warm cabin or slow service anymore. This was a breach. "Mark," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the cabin's noise like a knife. The laughter stopped. Every head turned. Mark walked over, his practiced smile finally gone. "Yes, Ms. Rhodes. My laptop has been moved," she said. It wasn't a question. "I need to know who touched it." Mark's face flushed. He glanced at Vanessa. "I can assure you, ma'am, we wouldn't." "I don't need assurances," Camille cut in, her voice now edged with steel. "I need the truth. Who touched my laptop?" The air was electric. The executives squirmed. They were used to her quiet authority in a boardroom, but this was raw, and it was personal. Feeling the heat, Mark made a fatal mistake. He lied. "Ma'am, maybe you just forgot how you left it." "We've been busy." "I don't forget," Camille said, her words like ice. "Let me ask one more time. Who touched my laptop?" That's when Vanessa stepped forward, chin out, instantly defensive. "I tidied the area," she snapped. "Your things were a mess. I was just doing my job." Camille's eyes narrowed. "My things were exactly as I left them. You had no right to touch my personal property, especially a device with sensitive company data." Vanessa, misreading Camille's composure as weakness and emboldened by the executive's silence, took it a step further. Her face twisted into a mask of pure resentment. In her mind, this wasn't the owner of the jet, this was just another demanding passenger, a black woman acting above her station. "You people are all the same," Vanessa sneered, the words thick with prejudice. "You think because you're flying private you can treat us like dirt. Get a little power and think you own the world." You could almost hear the air being sucked out of the cabin. Julian's mouth hung open. Anthony went pale. They were horrified, but they were paralyzed. They looked at Camille, waiting for her to explode. She didn't. She just held Vanessa's gaze, her calm expression becoming a mirror for Vanessa's own ugliness. And then it happened. Fueled by her rage and a silent audience, Vanessa snapped. She reached out and slapped Camille across the face. The sound was sharp, ugly, and loud, cracking through the cabin like a gunshot. For 5 eternal seconds, there was nothing. Just the hum of the engines. A red handprint started to bloom on Camille's cheek. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry out. She just closed her eyes for a split second, as if saving the moment to memory, the impact, the sound, and the deafening, damning silence of her own team. When she opened her eyes, they weren't filled with anger. They were filled with terrifying clarity. She looked right past Vanessa. She looked at Julian, her COO, staring with his mouth agape. She looked at Anthony, who now couldn't meet her eye. She looked at every single one of her leaders, and in their useless silence, she saw the full extent of the disease. The slap was just a symptom. The disease was complicity. And Camille Rhodes, the builder of empires, made a decision. It wasn't about revenge. It was a surgical extraction. And it had to happen now. Section 3, the resolution, the quiet reckoning, the echo of the slap faded, replaced by a thick, suffocating dread. Vanessa stood frozen, the shock of her own action finally registering. The executive team was a living statue of cowardice. Camille was the only one in control. She calmly pressed the call button for the cockpit. "Yes, Ms. Rhodes," the pilot's voice came over the speaker. "Captain," Camille said, her voice perfectly level. "Turn the plane around. We're returning to the Teterboro terminal. Immediately." "Ma'am, is there an emergency?" "Yes," Camille replied, her gaze finally sweeping across the terrified cabin. "A significant one. Turn the plane around." The 15-minute flight back was the longest of everyone's lives. No one spoke. No one moved. When the jet touched down, a black sedan was already waiting on the tarmac. As the door opened, a man in a sharp suit, Gregory Vance, the SVP of the aviation company, stepped aboard, his face grim. "Ms. Rhodes," he started, "I am so sorry." Camille held up a hand. "Gregory, thank you for coming. Everyone will remain on board." She then turned to him. "This aircraft has full audio and video surveillance. I want the recording of this flight displayed on the main monitor. Now." A few moments later, the cabin's big screen flickered to life. They watched it all. The ignored request. The sarcastic smirks. The condescending gesture. Then came the confrontation. They heard the lie, the denial, and Vanessa's venomous words. And then they saw the slap. In crystal clear HD, they watched her hand strike Camille's face. The sickening sound filled the cabin once more. The recording played on, capturing the long, damning silence from every single executive. Camille let the crushing silence hang in the air for a few more seconds before saying, "Pause it." The image of her stunned face and her useless, terrified team froze on the screen. She stood up. "Mark, Vanessa, your employment is terminated, effective immediately," she said, her voice quiet but final. "Your conduct was a failure of basic human decency." She then turned to Gregory. "Gregory, our multi-million-dollar contract is under immediate review. My legal team will be activating the dignity clause in our agreement." Finally, she turned to her own team. Her leaders. Her trusted mentors. Her expression wasn't rage. It was profound disappointment. "You're all fired," she said. The cabin exploded. "Camille, wait." Julian stammered. "You can't be serious. She assaulted you. Don't you get it?" "This was never about her," Camille said, her gaze sweeping their desperate faces. "She was just a test. A test every single one of you failed. The slap was the spark, but the fire of arrogance and entitlement, you brought that on board with you." She stepped closer. "A leader's first duty is to protect the company's integrity. When you saw your CEO being disrespected and then assaulted, you did nothing. You were bystanders. Cowards. Your silence wasn't just a personal betrayal. It was a betrayal of everything we've built." "But the London summit," Anthony pleaded. "The company is not its projects," she countered, her voice finally rising with passion. "It is its soul. And your soul is corroded. I cannot build the future with men who will not stand for what is right. I cannot have leaders who are merely passengers." She looked at each of them one last time. "Your access is revoked. Your accounts are frozen. Security is waiting. This is not a negotiation. It's a cleansing." With that, she turned her back on them, stepped off her jet, and got into the waiting sedan without a single look back, leaving the wreckage of their careers behind on the tarmac. Conclusion: the aftermath and the legacy. Of course, the story of an entire executive team being fired on a tarmac became a legend in business circles. But in this telling, the aftermath is where the real lesson lies. Camille didn't just fire people, she rebuilt the foundation. She worked with her board to implement a new standard, something we'll call the Rhodes Mandate. It was a radical new clause added to every contract Nexus Innovations signed. It mandated rigorous anti-bias and de-escalation training for all third-party staff. It created a direct, confidential way to report disrespect. And it made silence in the face of injustice a fireable offense for her own leadership team. The story of that day on the jet became the ultimate parable in the corporate world, a case study in what true leadership looks like. It's a reminder that power isn't about giving orders, it's about enforcing accountability. When a journalist in our story asked her months later what she felt in that moment, her answer was perfect. "It wasn't about what I felt," she said. "It was about what I saw. I saw a threat to the foundation of everything I have built. My only job as a leader is to protect that foundation, at any cost." The world saw a flight attendant slap a CEO. But what they really witnessed was a leader reminding everyone that she wasn't just a passenger on her own journey. She was the pilot. And her legacy wasn't just the company she built, but the standard she set, a standard where dignity is not negotiable. CTA, what would you have done in Camille's position? What's the most important lesson you take from this story? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe in the power of accountability and strong leadership, give this video a thumbs up, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and be sure to subscribe for more powerful stories that make you think. Thanks for watching.